Okay, so today I'm out at the house, and as you can see, I've got the sails behind me. I just pulled them all off the boats, the P-16 and the P-18, and I'm going to lay them out next to each other just to kind of see if there's, how they compare size-wise, and also see if there's interoperability between them. And I think what I'm most interested in is the 80% jib. I'm pretty sure that'll fit on the P-16, but I want to kind of see how it lays next to the P-16 110% jib. Okay, so let's talk about the differences that we see here. So on the top is the 80% jib, my heavy weather sail. And then the red one in the middle is the P-18's 100% working jib. And then the white one on the bottom is the 110% jib from the P-16. So the first thing we notice is that while the 80% jib is 20% smaller, most of that 20% is actually out of the foot. So it's the angle, the upward angle that's cut out of the foot is most of the sail area that's taken out. There's a little bit along the luff. You can see that it is just slightly shorter than the 100%. So it doesn't go quite as high on the mast or on the forestay. And then compared to the 110, so obviously the 110, so it has more foot, but it's much shorter because of where the forestay is mounted on the mast on the P-16. It's about 10 inches lower than on the P-18. So the 80% number 4 jib will not work on the P-16 because the luff of the sail is too long. All right, so the other thing is the build quality. So the two red sails are 6-ounce cloth, 6-ounce Dacron. The white sail is 5-ounce Dacron. And sails are built for the forces that they're expected to withstand based on the boat that they're being built for. And so, you have two sails that are being built for an 1,100-pound boat, and then you have a sail that's built for a 350-pound boat. And so, you can just see this is the heavy weather sail, so it's got some additional stitching on it. This is the standard jib. And then on the P-16, of course, you have cloth hanks, just because there's less force on the smaller boat sail. And so a different connection at the head as well. And then you can see here on the two P-18 sails, you've got double stitching at the luff. And then this extra reinforcement here and here, whereas on the P-16 sail there's no extra reinforcement and you just have single stitching. And then down here at the tack of the sail, of course, the heavy weather sail gets some extra webbing that's sewn on. The 100% jib has the double stitching and some extra stitching here. The connections are the same. And then on this one you have, of course, you have the wire rope, and then this piece of cord, but you don't have the extra stitching at the absolute luff of the sail. And then at the clew, you just see kind of your lighter stitching here. There is some stitching that goes out. Here you have even more stitching in multiple directions. And then on the 80%, you do still have extra stitching, but not quite as much as on the 100%. And then both the 80% and the 100% have a foot little tensioning line, and the 110 also does. So that's something that Chip Buck from Point Sails likes to do on his sails. Okay, so basically what I figured out here is that my 80% heavy weather jib cannot go on the P-16 because the luff is too long. And while maybe I could put the 110% from the P-16 on the P-18, really the build quality, it's not built for that. It's not built for those extra loads. And so that really would not be a good idea, because it would be under a lot more pressure. It's a larger sail area wise. And so it would be under a lot more pressure than it is on the P-16. All right, look what I found. So this sail sits in a bag, and it's hanked on the deck. So it looks like a spider got in the bag and decided to create a little nest, a little egg pod. Okay, so now let's do the same thing for the mainsails. Okay, so let's talk about these two mainsails. So the white one is for the P-16, the blue is for the P-18. The P-16 sail has 4 partial battens, whereas the P-18 has a full batten at the top, but only has 3 total battens. So the P-18 sail has 2 reefing points, and the P-16 sail has 1 reefing point, and the normal reefing point placement is 12% of the luff, and so that's how the P-18 is set up. But on the P-16, since I only wanted 1 reefing point, I didn't want the extra lines on the boom. I didn't want there to be 2 lines, but I wanted to be able to pretty deeply reef it. And so what I did, I worked with Chip Buck, and I had not put, the P-16 does not come with reefing hardware on the boom, so that was going to be a custom installation anyway that I did myself. And so what I did is I had Chip put a 20% reef. So this line right here is the 20% reefing point. So it's a deep reef. Normally it would only be 12% of the luff length. And so I'm able to reef the boat pretty deeply, but without having 2 reefs. And then the other difference is, of course, the sailcloth. So 5-ounce white sailcloth versus 6-ounce with the blue on the P-18. The P-16 has a bolt rope luff with a loose foot. And then the P-18 has a bolt rope foot with slugs. So you can see the slugs. Okay, so the first thing I'm surprised by is the length of the P-16 foot. So it's substantially longer than the P-18 foot. And of course the P-18 is a bolt rope, which means that the bottom, the foot of the sail, has to fit into a slot, so it's very snug. Whereas the P-16 sail is loose, and so it can bag out a little more for extra lift. I also added an outhaul tensioner, so it has extra blocks, and I did that on both of these sails. And on the P-16 one, there's not enough room really to flatten out the foot, whereas on the P-18 I did have Chip, when he built the sail, trim a couple inches out of, compared to like what the Raleigh Tasker OEM sail was. I had him trim a couple inches so that I could better flatten out the foot. Okay, so with the luffs both lined up, you can see that the luff of the P-16 sail is, I don't know, maybe 5 inches longer. So a little bit longer, which I kind of wish it was about 5 inches shorter, so that I could put the boom a little higher. And then here you can see when the luffs are side by side. So with the luff side by side, the P-16 sail is a much wider sail. But I guess, it has a wider foot and it's a little taller, so it would make sense that it would be a little wider. So that's really interesting. Yeah, so what I've learned through this exercise is that I could fly my P-18 sail on my P-16, and I'd be able to flatten the foot more, and I could always fly it as a loose-footed sail, but the track in the boom is there, so I could do it as a bolt rope. And I'd have sail slugs, which would be nice because then I could flake the sail on the boom. Because I can't really do that with a bolt rope luff. Because when you bring the sail down, all the luff comes out of the mast gate. So that's nice. I'd be able to fly a heavier, heavy-duty sail, but that's smaller on the P-16 and still be able to reef it and have the advantage of the slugs, which would allow me to flake the sail on the boom, which I can't do really with the P-16 sail. I wish I had gotten the P-16 sail with slugs. That would have been nice because, yeah, every time you take down the sail, all that bolt rope just comes out of the track, and it's not ideal. And, I'd also be able to tighten the halyards really well, the main halyard, and get the luff really tight on the P-18 sail if I was flying it on the P-16, because I would have extra space between the masthead and the head of the sail, and so I could get a lot of tension on the luff of the sail. So all 5 of my sails are custom sails made by Chip Buck, who is the owner of Point Sails in San Diego. And Point Sails is fairly common among precision owners, just word of mouth kind of thing. So Chip also owns Whirlwind Sails, and so if you're a Hobie Cat person, then you've probably heard of Whirlwind Sails. If you watch Joyrider TV, that YouTube channel, you will see Whirlwind Sails on that channel. And so I worked with Chip to customize my new sails on my P-18 with custom colors, heavier sailcloth, and then just a few changes in the measurements so that I could, make sure that they could get nice and flat, and, it came with a double reef, of course. So just to wrap this up, the things that I learned here are that none of my jibs are going to be interchangeable. So, the 110 could fit on my P-18, but it's really not built for that displacement boat, for the larger boat. So that's not a good idea. The 80% jib that I was hoping would work on the P-16, the luff is too long, so that's not going to fit. But on the mainsails, the P-18 mainsail is actually smaller than the P-16 mainsail, and because it's built to a higher standard, it would be able to be flown on the P-16. And I think the only issue there is going to be that it has a heavier sailcloth, so that is a little more weight aloft. And when I got the new sail on my P-18, it was a noticeable difference when you hoist the sails, right? So it is definitely heavier, so that would add a little weight aloft on the P-16, which is an unballasted dinghy. So that might be a little bit of a concern, but I think it's worth trying it out. All right, well, as always, hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.